Hi, my name is Maya Collins. 10 years ago, when I was only 18, I sat at the dining table in our Aurora house and heard my parents speak the sentence that changed my life. Either you pay Bella's tuition for her future, or you move out tonight. I refused. And that very night they threw me out into the cold with a single canvas bag and nowhere to go. I thought I would never stand on my own feet, but time proved otherwise. They once believed I was the extra child, yet 10 years later, they knocked on my door asking for rescue from the girl they had discarded. If one day your parents asked you to sacrifice your future to fund someone else's dreams, what would you do? Right now, where are you watching this story from, and what time is it? Please tell me your story in the comments. Thank you so much. Growing up in my family, everything looked perfect from the outside, like a photo in a glossy wooden frame. The two-story house in Aurora had a backyard big enough for a trampoline. Every Sunday the family would drive to church, and my parents attended PTA meetings at school to show they were devoted to their children. Neighbors probably thought we were the picture of an ideal American family: a tidy house, a neatly mowed lawn, and two well-behaved, high-achieving daughters. But that was only the shiny coat on the surface. Inside, an unspoken rule always echoed: Bella was born to shine. Every conversation revolved around Bella, the eldest daughter with golden hair like our mother's and a singing voice everyone called angelic. I, Maya, was always just the name added on, the self-sufficient younger sister. I have always loved the little things no one else cared about. When I was 11, I became fascinated with rearranging the living room, sketching out floor plans with a pencil, and imagining how the afternoon light would soften if I swapped the curtains for pale blue ones. I liked picking up old furniture, a chipped wooden table, a wobbly chair, and experimenting with sanding and repainting until it became something worth displaying. Back then, I didn't know what to call it, only that it made me happy and gave me a sense of value. I set up a Facebook Marketplace account early, took photos of the pieces I restored, and sold them for a few $dozen. Every time someone came to pick up an item, I felt the joy of being recognized, as if I truly had a talent of my own. But in my parents' eyes, it was nothing more than a childish game. "That's not going to feed anyone, Maya. Focus on school," my father said firmly. My mother was even blunter. "What you're doing is just a hobby, not a career. Don't dream too much." While I struggled to prove that my passion was not meaningless, Bella was handed every opportunity on a silver platter. At just 12 years old, she received a brand new stage piano from a major music store in Denver, along with weekly private vocal lessons. My parents spared no expense sending her to theater, workshops, art camps, or any program her teachers recommended. They even hired a professional photographer to take portraits for Bella's scholarship portfolio. I remember her 13th birthday vividly. The whole family rented a banquet room at an Italian restaurant, filled it with friends, balloons, a 3-tier cake, and under the lights stood a shining new piano. When my own 13th birthday came, my parents handed me an old desk lamp with a flickering bulb saying, "You like to draw, so this should suit you." No parties, no friends, just a quiet evening with frozen pizza, while Bella practiced on her piano in the living room. I forced a smile to keep the mood from sinking, but inside, a silent crack began to form. At school, I tried my best not to become a complete shadow. I enrolled in AP Art, made the honor roll almost every year, and got a part-time job at the nearby home goods store. I volunteered for the evening restocking shifts just so I could learn how to coordinate items, arrange furniture displays, and watch how customers chose their decorations. Every time I saw someone pick up something I had organized, I felt a small flicker of pride, as if my quiet work actually mattered. But at home, when I shared those stories, my mother would only shrug. "Anyone can do interior work. You're just doodling and arranging things." Meanwhile, Bella would sing once on the school stage and immediately be praised as the bright star of the future. On nights when I sat sketching living room layouts for fun, my father would walk past and mutter, "No company hires someone just to draw chairs." His words were like a dull knife, never sharp enough to cut my hope away completely, but always leaving fresh scratches day after day. I slowly learned how to shrink my dreams until they could fit into the tiny space my parents allowed. I didn't brag when I sold something on Marketplace, nor did I mention it when I got an A on a perspective drawing. I kept it to myself, because every time I spoke up, I was met with cold looks or unfair comparisons. Bella has a performance this week. What have you done? Those comparisons didn't just stop at words, they seeped into daily treatment. Bella never had to wash dishes because she needs to practice her vocals for hours each night. I, on the other hand, still had to clean the house, vacuum, and wash plates even after finishing AP homework. If I missed a single dish, my mother would harp on it for the entire week. Bella was bought a new dress for every performance, while I was reminded that re-wearing old clothes is frugal. You should learn to appreciate it. I used to think maybe I simply wasn't good enough, which is why I didn't get recognized. But looking back, I understand the difference wasn't in the results but in the place I occupied in their eyes. Bella was born and defined as the star, while no matter how hard I tried, I remained a background shadow. The outside world saw us as a happy family, but in my heart Aurora was never home. It was a stage where Bella played the lead and I was a supporting character stuck in the wings, there only to make the family portrait look complete. That was the quiet, smoldering wound that would later erupt into a permanent separation. I started working part-time at 16. While most of my friends were busy with football practice or mall hangouts, I was wearing a brown apron behind the counter of a small coffee shop next to the supermarket. Each 6-hour shift paid just over $9 an hour, and I worked 3 or 4 shifts a week. On weekends, I picked up extra hours at HomeGoods, stacking shelves, dusting, and restocking. The money wasn't much, but every dollar mattered to me. I carefully put the wages left after small expenses into a rectangular wooden box engraved with the initials MC, my first and last name, Maya Collins. It was the only birthday present I truly loved, from my Aunt June. To me, that wooden box was more than a place to keep money. It was a symbol of a part of my life I could control, however small. My plan was very clear. I wanted to buy a professional design laptop and a mid-range camera to start building a freelancing portfolio in interior design. I spent countless nights sketching, browsing websites, learning how to photograph spaces, and imagining the day someone would actually pay me for my creative work. After nearly a year of saving, the money in my wooden box had reached $2,100. Every time I opened it and neatly stacked the 20s and 50s, I felt as if I was touching a future I could truly grasp. In a family where everything seemed out of my reach, that wooden box was the one thing I believed no one would touch. Until the day I came home from an evening shift. I remember it was a chilly March night. I took off my shoes, went upstairs, and planned to open the box to count the money one more time, just to make sure I finally had enough to buy the laptop and camera on my list. But when I pulled out the drawer, there was only an empty space. The wooden box was gone. My heart dropped straight into my stomach. I tore the room apart, checked under the bed, in the closet, even on the bookshelf. No trace. Sweat broke out on my skin even though it was still cold outside. I ran downstairs and saw my mother sitting on the sofa doing her crossword puzzle, just like every night. My voice trembled as I asked, "Mom, have you seen my wooden box?" She didn't even look up, only answered flatly, "Oh, that. Your father and I took it. Bella needs to pay tuition for the Art Academy in LA." I froze. For a moment, I couldn't believe my ears. "Mom, that was the money I earned, the money I saved. I was going to buy a laptop and a camera." She cut me off. "You're still young. You'll have plenty of time to buy those things. But Bella has to seize her opportunity now. Her future is what matters most." I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. "Then give me a loan agreement. I'll consider it as lending Bella the money, and she can pay it back later." At that moment, my father stepped out from the kitchen, leaning against the doorway, and spoke clearly. "There's no such thing as borrowing here, that's household money. If it's used for family, it's not stealing. It's not theft if it stays within the family, Maya." I looked at him, his eyes like 2 slabs of ice. In that instant, I understood that all my effort had been reduced to dust in their eyes, worth nothing except to serve Bella's dream. That night, I lay in bed unable to sleep. The numbers I had once carefully written down, CPU, RAM, camera prices, now felt meaningless. I kept replaying the scene in my head, my mother's casual tone, as if taking my savings was perfectly normal, and my father's moralizing words, turning outright theft into sacrifice for the family. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked tight. Tears soaked my pillow, but I didn't dare cry out loud, afraid they would hear and take it as proof of my weakness. The next day, I opened my phone and saw Bella's story, a photo of her sitting in a rehearsal room in Los Angeles, captioned, "Thank you, Mom and Dad, for always believing in me." Beneath it were endless comments of praise. Such a wonderful daughter. The Collins family must be so proud. Bella is going to be famous. My chest ached as I read them. Not a single mention of me. Not a word of gratitude for the reality that my dream had been sacrificed to fund hers. Suddenly, I let out a dry, hollow laugh, a sound that echoed in the dark room like the pop of a bottle opening into emptiness. After that, I never saw the wooden box as a safe place again. It was gone, along with the fragile belief that if I worked hard enough, my family would recognize my efforts. I realized that in this house, anything that belonged to me could be taken away at any moment, as long as they slapped the label for Bella's future on it. And from that day on, I silently carved one lesson into myself. If I wanted to hold on to my dreams, I had to hide them well and protect them as if no one else in the world would ever do it for me. The day I received the thick cream-colored envelope with the green seal from the University of Washington, my heart pounded so hard I thought my chest would burst. My hands trembled as I tore open the paper and read the italicized line. "We are pleased to inform you." I had been accepted into interior architecture, the program I had dreamed about all through high school. I was even awarded a partial scholarship, enough to cover part of the tuition, though I still needed about $20,000 a year to manage the rest. To me, that wasn't impossible. I had a plan: apply for FAFSA, work part-time, live in a small dorm, and save every penny. I believed that this time, after years of being dismissed, my parents would finally have to see my true worth. That night, I placed the letter on the dining table, waiting for my parents' reaction. My mother glanced at it, took a sip of water, and said, "Oh, that's nice." Not a single word of congratulations. My father didn't even lift his eyes from the newspaper. Bella sat across from me, fiddling with her phone, a faint smile playing on her lips. I bit my lip but forced myself to add, "I got a partial scholarship. I need about $12,000 more from the college fund we've been saving since I was 15. Dad, you still keep that account, right?" I emphasized the words college fund because it hadn't just fallen from the sky. It was every shift at HomeGoods, where I learned to arrange furniture displays while sweeping the stockroom. It was the hours at the local coffee shop, my hands cracked from steam but still smiling at customers to earn a few extra dollars in tips. It was the honor roll prizes, the small student awards, the times I won second place in poster design contests, just a couple $100 each, but treasures I clutched as if they were gold. All of it, I had handed over to Dad because I wasn't yet 18 to open an account myself. He told me, "Don't worry, I'll keep it safe for you. That's your future." And I believed him, naive enough to think every time he signed for my prize money, it was a guarantee of safety. The room suddenly grew unnaturally quiet. My mother slowly set her glass down. My father finally folded the newspaper and looked straight at me, his eyes filled with both irritation and unease. "About that," he cleared his throat. "That money is gone." I blinked, confused. "Gone? What do you mean gone? I worked every shift, saved every dollar for 3 years. How can it be gone?" My mother cut in, her voice flat, as if discussing dinner. Bella needed to attend a showcase in New York. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We had to use the fund. This is more important. I went numb. My breath caught in my throat. I remembered every late night after the coffee shop closed, sweeping the floor until my arms ached, Every tip I tucked into an envelope and handed to my father. I had trusted him. And now it was all gone, simply because Bella needed an opportunity. I swallowed back my tears, forcing my voice to stay steady. Then at least give me a promissory note, or help me apply for a federal loan. I can carry the rest myself. I just need a little support to start, then I'll work while studying to cover the rest. My father slammed his hand on the table, the sharp sound cracking through the room. No more schooling. You need to understand, this family can only afford to invest in one child. Bella is at a critical stage. Either you drop out, start working, and contribute $18,000 toward your sister's tuition this semester, or you pack your things and leave this house right now. Don't stand there playing the victim. My throat tightened, disbelief flooding me. What do you mean? I just got into my dream university. I have a scholarship. Why should I give that up and pay for Bella instead of myself? My mother folded her arms, her eyes cold as steel. Don't be selfish, Maya. You know Bella was born to shine. This family has pinned all its hopes on her. As for you, you should be grateful you have a roof and meals here. I turned to Bella, searching for a word, a glance, any sign that she understood what I had lost because of her. But Bella only shrugged, as if it had nothing to do with her at all. I clenched my fists, my heart aching as if someone were squeezing it. All my life I had heard them say Bella was the star and I was only a shadow. But in that moment, for the first time I dared to say aloud, I will not pay another cent for Bella's dreams. If you want to kick me out, do it. But don't expect me to keep sacrificing. My father's face flushed red. He stood up abruptly, pointing toward the door. Then pack up and leave tonight. Don't stay under this roof being ungrateful for another second. My mother said nothing, silently clearing the plates as if the evening's conversation had never happened. Bella kept her head down, absorbed in her phone, the screen casting a cold light over her expressionless face. I rose, the chair scraping the floor with a harsh sound. My heart pounded, but not from fear, it was the rhythm of a door closing for good. I knew then that from that second on, I no longer had a home in Aurora. Only a dim, but at least my own future remained. I went upstairs, hastily grabbed a few clothes, stuffed my books into my backpack. My mother stood at the top of the stairs with her arms folded, not meeting my eyes. As I passed, she said one short sentence. Don't come back begging. I did not answer, I only tightened the straps of my backpack. That night, when the door slammed shut behind me and the lock clicked like a full stop, I stood on the porch with the cold wind slapping my face and my hands trembling. But amid the chill there was a tiny flame inside me. I had said no. And from that moment my life began to turn in a different direction, a hard road, but the only road that belonged to me. Early winter in Colorado was harsher than I had imagined. I stood on the stoop, my shoulders bowed under the weight of a worn canvas bag, my breath rising in white puffs into the dark. The door behind me had just shut, the sound of the lock still echoing in my ears. I did not cry. I thought I would, but instead there was only a cold hollow inside. I pulled out my phone, its screen cracked at the corner, and saw a new message from Aunt June. If you choose Seattle, I have a place for you. Don't let anyone decide for you. I stared at those words for a long time, feeling both pain and relief. At least somewhere in the world, someone still saw value in me, but that night I couldn't leave right away. I had no car, no ticket, not even cash beyond a few small bills. I had only one option. Call Riley, my best friend since high school. My fingers shook as I dialed. After 2 rings he picked up. I managed to say, "Riley, I've been kicked out." He was silent for a second, then said, "Stay where you are, I'm coming." 30 minutes later, Riley's old silver Toyota Corolla pulled up. The car still smelled faintly of leftover tacos from dinner. The windows held a few pieces of tape. But to me, in that moment, it looked like a rescue vehicle. Riley didn't ask many questions. He opened the passenger door and looked at me with sorrow and anger mixed together. "Get in, let's go." That night, I slept on Riley's old couch. The cushions sagged in the middle, the fabric was worn and fuzzy, but it felt warmer than anywhere I had ever been in my own house. I curled up, using my hoodie as a pillow, listening to the ceiling fan creak as it spun and the wind whistle outside the window. For the first time in years, I felt safe, even though the future was nothing but a blur. I lay there wide awake, caught between fear and relief, my mind looping the same question over and over. Where will I go tomorrow? The next morning, pale sunlight slipped through the curtains. Riley had already left for his early shift at the gas station. His mother, a kind Mexican woman, stood in the kitchen frying eggs in a pan. She turned to me and smiled. "Stay and have breakfast. You don't need to explain anything." I nodded and quietly sat down, taking the plate of eggs and tortilla she placed in front of me. Just a simple meal, but warmer than any dinner I had ever shared with my parents. Each bite tightened my throat with emotion. When I returned to the couch, I opened my phone again. Another message from Aunt June had arrived. "Tonight I'm booking a Greyhound ticket for you. From Denver to Seattle, then a Southwest connection. Don't carry too much, just enough for the first few days." I read it again and again, a mix of fear and hope stirring inside me. I had never gone that far on my own before, but if I stayed, I would forever be Bella's shadow. Leaving was terrifying, but it was the only choice if I wanted a different life. 2 days later, I stepped onto the Greyhound bus with a small backpack and a worn canvas bag. In my hand, I clutched the paper my aunt had tucked into the envelope, not cash, but a short list. Local credit union, open your own account. Cheap boarding house, a place for your first month. Creative community group in Capitol Hill, people who can help you find small jobs. Craigslist furniture, a source for affordable pieces to get started. I read each line again and again as if it were a map. It wasn't much, but it was exactly how my aunt taught me. Don't hand over the fish, hand over the fishing pole. As the bus pulled away, I looked out the window. The small town of Aurora shrank behind me. The long, cold road ahead made me shiver, but for the first time in my life, I felt the trembling of freedom. I didn't know what Seattle had waiting for me. I didn't know if I was strong enough to endure. But I knew one thing for certain. I would never again let anyone lay a hand on my dreams. And from that journey, my real story began. Seattle greeted me with a heavy gray rain on the very first day I arrived. The city felt like it had a damp blanket draped over everything. The wooden houses, the sloping streets, even the soul of a newcomer like me. I rented a shared studio in Capitol Hill with a music student. The apartment was so small it could barely fit 2 single beds, a wobbly kitchenette, and a window speckled with black mold. Each morning I woke to dim light filtering through a torn curtain, the smell of mildew mixing with the stale scent of coffee from the shop downstairs. And yet, it was the first place I could call mine since the night I was thrown out. I landed a barista job at a local coffee shop, with morning shifts starting at 5. By 4:30, I was already in my thin raincoat, pedaling the old bike I had bought off Craigslist, its wheels squeaking as I pushed up the freezing hills. At the shop, I turned on the grinder, wiped down the counters, baked frozen muffins, and greeted the first customers, usually tired office workers, with half-shut eyes. My hands slowly hardened from the steam and hot milk, my knuckles raw and red. Every time I set a latte on the counter, I remembered those nights back at the old house, when my mother scolded me for messing up the kitchen, just because I washed dishes too slowly. Now, no one scolded me, but I could see clearly. I was earning every single dollar with my own labor. In the afternoons, I rushed to the school's studio lab. Interior architecture was no easy path. Perspective drawings and 3D models kept me up countless nights. I often sat in the library until closing, my old laptop battery dying over and over, but I pushed on, learning color theory, layout design, and the history of architecture. At night, when most students went out to bars or movies, I scavenged cast-offs left on curbs, broken chairs, chipped tables, busted lamps. I hauled them back on my bike, sometimes nearly crashing in the rain. In my damp little apartment, I sanded, painted, patched cushions, and then listed them on Marketplace. Each piece sold gave me a few extra dollars for the utility bills. I still remember my first failure, the one that nearly broke me. A client reached out, asking me to stage a studio apartment in Fremont for $400. I was thrilled. I spent a whole week preparing a mood board, borrowing props from Craigslist, even hand-building a few wall shelves. But on contract day, they asked if I had insurance. I froze. I hadn't known I needed liability coverage to work inside someone else's home. The client canceled on the spot. I went back to my room, staring at the wall, my hands still burning from paint that hadn't dried. That night, I wrote a note and stuck it above my bed. Don't let missing paperwork kill opportunity. I left it there like a vow that I would never again let ignorance destroy my hard work. Those first months felt like an endless chain of trials. I often had to choose between eating a full meal or buying another box of markers. On cold, rainy days, the wind whipped my face raw, and my hands cracked and bled as I scrubbed down an old wooden table I had dragged home from the curb. The smell of paint, the damp scent of pine, the steady patter of rain outside my window, all of it became the rhythm of my new life. And strangely enough, for the first time ever, I didn't feel pitiful. I felt dignity. No one could say the money I earned belonged to Bella's future. No one could take it from me. By the end of my first year, I held in my hands not just a solid report card but also my very first portfolio, small design projects, photos of the furniture I had upcycled, even a few modest apartments I had staged for pocket change. I had 3 paying clients, not much, but each dollar felt like a milestone. Proof that I could turn the passion they once dismissed into real work. That night, I sat in my cramped room, listening to Seattle rain fall outside the window, flipping through each page of my portfolio on my laptop. The glow of the screen lit my tired face, but the corners of my mouth lifted. I whispered to myself, "Maya, you did it." And for the first time since the night I was thrown out, I felt I truly had a place in this world. Graduation day arrived under a rare, flawless blue Seattle sky after weeks of drizzle. I wore a deep purple gown, borrowed from a student who had graduated the year before because I couldn't afford to buy my own. Around me, classmates posed for photos, their parents holding flowers and balloons, eyes shining with pride. I scanned the wide lawn where the ceremony was held, fully aware that no one from my family would be there. But when the loudspeaker called my name, from the very last row, Aunt June stood up, raising high a bouquet of bright yellow tulips. My eyes blurred. For one fleeting moment, I knew I had been right to walk away from the Aurora house years ago. After the ceremony, Aunt June wrapped me in a tight embrace and whispered in my ear, "You don't need the whole world's approval, only the confidence to walk your own path." I clutched the tulips, feeling as though I was holding an entire new spring in my arms. The diploma wasn't just an academic certificate, it was proof that I could rebuild a life from nothing but my own 2 hands. My first job came through a small community connection, introduced by one of Aunt June's acquaintances. His name was Min, a Vietnamese-American real estate agent in Tacoma. He needed someone to help stage homes before putting them on the market. "It's not glamorous work," he said, "but if you can turn a house into a story, buyers will want to live in it." I listened, my heart racing. For the first time, someone was speaking to me seriously, acknowledging that the work I loved could create real value. In my first days as an assistant stager, I learned more than in all 4 years of college combined. I learned how to choose curtains so that the afternoon light warmed the kitchen, how to place an armchair by a window to invite relaxation, even how to spray a faint pine scent so that buyers felt peace the moment they stepped inside. I realized staging wasn't just arranging furniture, it was about creating an attainable dream, making buyers imagine themselves already living there. But every new road has its rough turns. Once, I signed a staging contract with a homeowner in Kent. We agreed on a fee of $1,200. I was thrilled, prepared a mood board, rented furniture, hauled each piece in a borrowed van from Min. I put almost all my personal savings up front to get everything ready. But when the project was complete, the homeowner claimed the house hadn't sold as quickly as expected and refused to pay. I was crushed. Weeks of work, sleepless nights, and in the end I was left with nothing. I didn't know how to argue, and I had no binding contract to protect me. That night, I sat alone in my cramped rented room, staring at the pile of rental invoices and delivery receipts. Tears fell not because of the money, but because of the feeling of being cheated again, just like when the MC box had been taken from me. I realized that unless I protected myself, the world would always find ways to steal my labor. The very next morning, I sat at the tiny kitchen table, opened my old laptop, and typed out the first lines of a standard contract. The first clause I wrote, underlined in bold: 50% deposit required before work begins. Non-refundable. Line. From then on, whenever I took a new job, I always presented that contract. Some clients frowned, some resisted, but the ones who were truly serious agreed. I gradually learned that professionalism wasn't about pleasing everyone, it was about setting boundaries and forcing others to respect the value of my labor. In the months that followed, I worked and studied at the same time. I researched liability insurance, opened a separate savings account no one else could touch, and attended networking events hosted by the local real estate association. People started calling me a promising young stager, a small title, but enough to make me hold my head high. I was no longer just the girl who picked up curbside junk and fixed it up. I had stepped into the real world of those who made a living by creating dreams for others. I spent nearly 3 years working under others, long enough to understand how the real estate market operated and long enough to realize that if I kept following someone else's path, I would always be a shadow. On every project I joined, I took meticulous notes: staging costs, completion time, how much faster the home sold, how much the price increased. I kept an Excel file packed with numbers, and in every line of data, I saw opportunity. One night, sitting in my damp rented room, the dim yellow light shining over stacks of bills, I asked myself, if I pulled all my savings together, could I build something that was truly mine? The answer came from the emptiness I felt every time I looked at my paycheck. I was ready. I withdrew the entire $18,000 I had saved over the years, the money earned from barista shifts that began at 5 in the morning, from curbside furniture I sanded until my hands cracked, and from small contracts where I carefully held onto every deposit. I rented a small warehouse on the outskirts of Seattle, 4 cold concrete walls that became the foundation of my company. I bought a used Ford Transit, paint peeling and engine groaning, but still capable of long drives. Inside the warehouse, I arranged 12 basic furniture sets: neutral gray sofas, oak dining tables, simple rugs, desk lamps, and a handful of minimalist decor pieces. Nothing extravagant, just enough to turn an empty house into a place that whispered, worth living in. I named the company Hearth and Haven Hearth and Shelter. 2 things I had longed for my entire childhood. From the very start, I set a clear position. No fluff, just results. No unnecessary frills, no showboating. I promised clients that within 72 hours, I would transform their property into a home buyers would dream of moving into. More importantly, I offered something rare in the industry. ROI reports, hard numbers, proving that my staging helped homes sell faster and for higher prices. It wasn't just about beautiful furniture, it was about a smart investment. I knew clients didn't care about empty compliments, they cared about returns. In the early months, I drove the Ford Transit alone, hauling sofas by myself, laying down rugs one by one. On rainy days, I waded through ankle-deep dirty water just to deliver furniture on time. I arranged flowers, hung paintings, scrubbed floors, even fixed broken door hinges. The work wore down my body, but when I saw an empty house suddenly come alive with warmth, my blood burned with happiness. Within just 6 months, without flashy ads, word of mouth spread. The Seattle real estate community began to whisper, "There's this girl who stages houses fast, neat, no fuss, and every property she touches sells." 2 years later, Hearth and Haven reached 7 figures in revenue. I wasn't living in luxury, but I knew I had finally stepped out of the shadow of being the extra child my parents once branded me. I bought a small condo overlooking Lake Union. In the mornings, I often stood by the window, watching the sunlight shimmer over the rippling water. By the door, I hung a little keychain shaped like a house. Every time I touched it, I reminded myself, At last, I had built a home with my own hands. No one could take it from me, no one could claim it was for Bella's future. Alongside success, I began another journey, the journey of healing. I went to therapy every week. At first, I felt awkward sitting across from a therapist, recounting stories I thought I had buried. But slowly, I learned that wounds don't vanish on their own, they need to be acknowledged and cared for. I learned how to say no without guilt, how to set boundaries and protect them. I realized that my worth wasn't measured by how much money I made, but by knowing I deserved respect. Some late nights, I still thought of the MC wooden box, of the college fund stolen, of the dinners where my name was never mentioned. But instead of bitterness, I smiled. Without those losses, I would never have had the fire to rise, to build Hearth and Haven, to become the woman I am today. Seattle, with its rain, its scent of pine, its dim lights over Lake Union had become the place where I learned to live true to myself, no longer a shadow, but a whole being. One late November afternoon, I was standing in the showroom reviewing year-end contracts when my phone rang. Aunt June's name appeared on the screen. Her voice was steady, low, but firm. "Maya, the time has come. It's time they see who you've become. I want you home for Thanksgiving this year. The whole family will be there." My hand tightened around the pen. Memories rushed through me: the vanished wooden box, the stolen college fund, the cold porch the night I was cast out. All of it thundered in my chest. I stayed silent for a long moment, then finally said, "All right, I'll come." 1. On Thanksgiving Day, I wore a simple black dress and a long wool coat. Not to flaunt, but to remind myself that I was not the trembling girl of the past walking into that house. I carried a bottle of fine red wine, just enough to show I wasn't lacking, but not a boast. When I entered the dining room, the space was packed, filled with the smell of turkey and mashed potatoes mingling with the buzz of chatter. My eyes immediately found my parents. They sat at the head of the table, still carrying the same arrogance as ever, their gaze sliding past me as though I were nothing more than a stranger. Bella, in a glittering evening gown, was the center of attention. She smiled brightly, raised her glass, and told everyone about the $1 million staging project she was collaborating on with my company. She never said my name outright, but she emphasized, "I'm working directly with Hearth and Haven, their team is supporting me." Maya is also part of that group. Her voice was sweet, but every word cut like a blade through my memories. The message was clear. I was still just a subordinate to her career, as if, even after 10 years, I existed only to serve Bella's future. I sat still, saying nothing. I let every eye in the room continue to admire her. I let my mother nod with pride, and my father raise his glass to toast our golden daughter carrying on the family tradition. A storm of fury rose inside me, but I held it back. I had learned that revenge doesn't come from shouting, it comes from silence at the right moment, followed by a truth no one can deny. Just as the table reached its peak of celebration, Aunt June set down her glass, turned to me, and asked clearly, "Maya, what exactly do you do at Hearth and Haven? The whole family should hear it from you." The room froze. Bella's lips curled in a smirk, my mother shot me a challenging glance. I smiled faintly, pulled out the iPad I had kept in my bag. A few taps, and the screen lit up with the contract dashboard, a list of active projects, client names, progress updates. I turned the screen so everyone could see, then opened a thread of emails in them. Bella had impersonated a partner representative of my company, even blatantly demanding a 20% referral fee. The mood in the room shifted instantly. A few relatives frowned and murmured. My mother flushed and was about to speak when I calmly tapped the screen to make a call and put it on speaker. I connected with the broker partner who had been working with me. When he answered, I spoke clearly. "Hello, I'm Maya Collins, CEO of Hearth and Haven. May I ask if your company is working with Bella Collins?" There was a short laugh, then the man replied, "Not at all. In fact, we've blocked her number for impersonation. We don't do business with people who operate like that." "Aloo." The answer rang out over the speaker in the middle of the dining table. Each word pierced the false halo Bella had wrapped around herself. Her face went pale, her hand gripped her wineglass so hard it trembled. My mother gaped, my father scowled, and the room fell deathly silent, save for the faint clink of cutlery against plates. I took a breath and looked them in the eye. For 10 years, anyone who took what was mine to feed Bella's illusions will have to pay for it. But this time, it will not be paid with my money. I closed the iPad, stood up, and straightened my coat. No shouting, no further proof needed. That room had already witnessed the truth. I set the bottle of wine in the middle of the table, glanced at Aunt June, and gave her a small nod of gratitude. Then I walked out, leaving behind a dining room frozen in heavy silence. The Seattle wind cut cold against my skin, yet inside I felt a strange warmth. I knew, from that moment on, the balance of power in the family had shifted. No one could deny who I truly was anymore. The news spread faster than I expected. Just weeks after that Thanksgiving dinner, Bella Collins's name began appearing in Seattle realtor groups as a warning. Agencies across the city blocked her number once they discovered her impersonation schemes and brazen referral fee demands. A few anonymous LinkedIn posts described her as unreliable and desperate to leech off others' reputations. The room that once thundered with applause for Bella now echoed with silence. Her reputation, built on a cheap coat of paint, collapsed overnight. Meanwhile, my parents faced the financial consequences they had sown for years. My father had once confidently taken out a second mortgage on the Aurora house to invest in Bella's future. The money had gone into lavish theater programs, expensive trips to New York, and half-finished projects she abandoned. Now, with no income to cover the mounting interest, the proud fortress of their home turned into a burden. One winter morning, a foreclosure notice was posted on their front door. The bold letters were colder than any criticism. Foreclosure, property repossession, scheduled. I didn't hear about it from them, but from an old friend in my old neighborhood who messaged, "Maya, your parents' house is about to be taken by the bank. They're in chaos." I read the message, my hand trembling slightly, then set the phone down. It was no longer my responsibility. Yet, like a familiar chess move, they came to me. One gray morning in Seattle, I was in the Hearth and Haven office when the receptionist paged, "Maya, 3 people claiming to be your parents and sister are in the lobby. They want to see you now." I checked the camera. 3 familiar faces, gaunt but still trying to wear defiance. Dad had his arms folded, Mom was muttering something to Bella, and Bella kept looking up at the lobby ceiling as if she were the wronged party. I inhaled slowly. 10 years ago, I would have stormed down to the lobby and shouted every grievance. But today, I didn't need to. I had learned that victory doesn't always mean crushing the other person. Sometimes victory is setting boundaries and letting others face the consequences of their own choices. I picked up the phone and called my attorney, who also happened to be the company's legal advisor. He arrived in less than 10 minutes, suit crisp, folder in hand. I stood behind the glass wall, watching him walk into the lobby. His voice was steady, firm. "I represent Miss Maya Collins. Per her instructions, from this moment forward, you are prohibited from contacting, harassing, or appearing at her residence or place of work. This is a cease and desist order, effective immediately. Any further violation will be addressed through legal action." Why? My father's face went pale, his mouth opening to protest, but the lawyer raised a hand and produced another folder. "Additionally, here is a list of social services you may contact. Emergency shelters, free legal aid, the 211 hotline connecting to community programs. I strongly encourage you to use these resources. But let me be clear, Hearth and Haven and Miss Collins will not serve as your financial or legal safety net." The lobby fell silent. My mother stared at the papers, her lips trembling but unable to form words. Bella snatched them, glanced over, then tossed them onto the reception desk with a bitter sneer. "You think a list like this can replace family?" I did not step out. I let the lawyer close his folder, the receptionist open the door, and security gently escort them outside. No shouting, no scene. Only the final sound of the glass doors shutting, sealing off a past full of shadows. When they left, I returned to my office, sat down in my chair, my heart pounding but not in chaos. I knew I had done the right thing, not lashing out in cruel revenge, not colluding to rescue an unjust family system that had exploited me. I chose instead to set boundaries, cold, perhaps, but responsible. I was no longer the girl forced to sacrifice for Bella's future. I was an adult, with the right to decide what I would give and what I would refuse. Looking out the window, the Seattle rain kept falling, washing every stain from the glass. I whispered softly, "At last, I'm free." And inside me, for the first time in years, there was no anger, only an open space, ready for the next chapter of my life. 2 months after that morning, when they stood in my company's lobby, I received a short message from Aunt June. "Maya, they're at the county shelter. I just wanted you to know." I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling neither anger nor satisfaction. Only a quiet stillness, like when an old wound has scarred over, and touching it no longer hurts. I didn't reply. I knew she wasn't asking for a reaction, she only wanted me to see the truth. In the end, the very family system that once forced me to sacrifice for Bella's future had collapsed under its own weight. And this time, I needed neither revenge nor redemption. One evening, while organizing files in my office, I came across an old envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from my father, his script careful and deliberate. "We are still your parents. Please don't let us die like this." I didn't tear it up. I didn't cry. Instead, I took a pin and tacked it behind the acceptance letter from the University of Washington, the one that had once been a brief joy before my parents crushed it. The 2 pages overlapped like a crossroads, one marking the beginning of betrayal, the other marking the end, when I chose my own path. I sat quietly, staring, then closed the folder. That was enough. The past belonged in a drawer, not to feed hatred, but to remind me how far I had come. Seattle gave me another rainy night. I locked up the hearth and Haven showroom, touching lightly the little house-shaped keychain that hung by the door. The metal was cold, yet inside me rose a warmth of safety. This was the place I built, brick by brick with my own hands. No one could put a price on it for me, just as no one had the right to put a price on my life anymore. Downstairs, beneath the office, there was a small cafe I often visited when I needed quiet. In the corner stood a blackboard where customers could write with chalk. That night, I picked up a piece of white chalk and slowly wrote, "Family doesn't mean control. Boundaries mean love." How it? I stepped back and looked at the words glowing under the warm yellow light. A few customers nearby read them silently, some nodded, others took photos. I smiled faintly. I didn't need anyone to know the story behind it, only that someone might see these words and feel a moment of recognition for their own journey. In this closing chapter of my life, I wasn't hoping for an apology, nor did I need them to bow their heads in regret. All I needed was one door to close so another could open in the right place. I chose the family I built myself, friends, colleagues, clients who respected my work and my boundaries. That was the real home. If one day someone were to ask me, "Do you have anything left to give them?" I would answer, I gave them the lesson I carved out with my own blood and tears, that the worth of a person is never for anyone else to decide. And with that answer, I knew I had come full circle. From the girl erased by her own family, to the woman who stood tall on her own feet and built a life of wholeness not through others' validation, but through the strength she found within herself. The Seattle night was still rainy, but within me, the sky had been clear for a long time. Thank you for listening until the end. I'll see you again in the next Family Revenge Stories, airing daily on this channel.